Bosque Wetlands Park in South El Paso. This is a 372-acre park that's managed by UTEP's Center for Environmental Resource Management. This park is home to many different species of wildlife, plants, and birds, which we'll be talking about today. There are so many birds all around us every day. Have you ever stopped to wonder, what are they actually doing? We know that they're traveling and eating and raising their young like all wildlife, but what type of ecological significance do they have? You might be surprised at the number of things that we couldn't do or manage without birds. There are so many different kinds of birds here in El Paso, Texas, and all around North America, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. Some common ones we have here that might be familiar to you are the roadrunner, which you may have seen in cartoons, a burrowing owl, which is a type of owl that burrows underground, and Gambel's quail. They're the quail that have these little feathers on their forehead like this, and they scurry across the desert. These types of birds are resident birds. They live here in the environment of El Paso all year round, and they tend to burrow near the ground level, so they have very neutral colors to them. What kind of birds might you find in your own backyard? Each different kind of bird serves a different ecological purpose. Now, some birds are responsible for scattering seeds all over the landscape to make sure that greenery can spread all throughout. Other birds, like hummingbirds, are responsible for helping pollinate plants like bananas and papayas. Without hummingbirds, we might not have as many of these fruits. Another essential ecological function that birds play is pest control. Many birds eat insects that would otherwise come after us or our food crops. You can see here that a bird was probably searching for an insect, and they got a little too carried away and started pecking at this head of broccoli. However, if we didn't have any birds controlling these insect pests, they would go way out of control, and we would have a really hard time controlling them on our own. Now that you have an understanding of how important birds are to the entire ecosystem and the world around you, you might be wondering how you can start to identify them. For starters, male and female birds tend to look different. Oftentimes male birds will be larger and more colorful than female birds. When you're looking at birds, you want to notice what colors and patterns are on their feathers, the size that they are, what shape of beak that they have, and any other characteristics that you can find out about them. Once you have all that information, see if you can compare them to any other birds that you already know about, and try and use your information to search online. If you have a pair of binoculars, they're really useful for finding birds in trees, like the owl that's hiding up in this one. So when you're going out bird watching, you might see the bird itself, or you just might see clues that the bird has left behind. Here you can see a feather that has been dropped by a bird, and I have a ruler here so we can measure the size of the feather. Now when you find feathers, it's an important clue as to which bird the feather might have come from. Notice the shape, the size, and the color of the feather, but when you see a feather, be sure you leave it in place and take a picture for later identification. Some bird feathers are illegal to collect, so you want to keep them in their natural environment. When you're looking for evidence of birds, another thing you'll find are bird tracks. Now, bird tracks are the most visible in a sandy place or in an area where there's mud. Here in the sand, you'll notice this trail of tracks going through that were probably left by crows or grackles, which are large black birds that are very common in this area. One thing that you can help identify these tracks with is a ruler. If you know the size of the tracks, then you can more easily look up resources online to find out who those tracks might belong to. Another clue that you might notice when you're looking for birds is the sounds that birds make. Bird songs come in a beautiful variety, and some of them are very clearly recognizable. For example, the caw of a crow is something that we all know, and when we hear it, we know that there are crows nearby. Be sure you listen for bird songs whenever you're out in the wild. Whenever you're near a body of water looking for birds, one of the main kinds of birds that you'll probably find are ducks. Ducks come in all different colors, and depending on where you live, you may see them more in the winter or in the summer months. The ducks that are here in El Paso have migrated south for the winter. Now, we do get a lot of nights that fall below freezing, but that's definitely preferable to them to the snow that they experience up north. Once springtime comes, they'll fly back up north to start their families and continue generations of ducks to come. So when you're first learning to identify birds and you're paying attention to all the little details about them, you might notice that they have very different types of beaks. And those beaks can be used for identification, but they can also tell us about the habits and the diet of the bird. You might notice that some birds have really long skinny beaks, kind of like these tweezers here. Hummingbirds have these kind of long skinny beaks so they can reach into flowers and drink the nectar from inside. And while they're doing that, they're also pollinating the flowers. Now, if you look at songbirds, you might notice two different types of beaks on those songbirds. Some of them have short, blunt beaks, like these pliers here. They're used to pick up seeds and to crush them between their beak. Other songbirds eat insects instead of seeds. They have pointed beaks that are still pretty small, but they're good for picking insects off of plants and off of the ground. Now, we saw some ducks a little bit earlier, and we talked about how they can strain out food from the water in the lake. This is kind of similar to a slotted spoon, where you pick some things up from the water and the solids stay in the spoon while the water drains out. In this way, we can kind of see how bird beaks have almost inspired some of the tools that we use and the way that we use them. So now that you understand just how important birds are to the environment all around us, you might be interested in attracting them to your yard or home garden so that you can identify them and find out who it is that you're seeing. One way you can do this is by providing a bird bath. Giving birds a bird bath gives them a place to drink, socialize, and bathe, and you'll be able to get a great look at them while they're doing it. Another thing you can do is to provide a birdhouse or a bird feeder to attract birds. We'll show you some ways that you can do that right at home. So when you're exploring your backyard or a park in search of birds, you might find evidence of a bird's home, which is a nest. There's a nest high up in this tree that you can see here, and having a nest high up keeps the birds protected from predators. Now, if you look closely at this nest, you'll see that there are bits of grass, bits of fluff like cotton and feathers, and maybe even some fluffy seed pods that are woven into the nest. And another way that you can attract birds to your yard is to provide them with some of these nesting materials. Birds are actively nesting in the springtime, so that's when you'll have the most luck. There are some things that you might have around your house that you can use to attract birds, like this twine string here. Birds like natural fibers like this that are stringy and that they can weave together to form their nest. If you have other types of string or thread, those can be used as well. Now, it might seem strange, but you can even use hair or pet fur to supply birds with some nesting material. One other thing you can look for are seed pods and pieces of grass and things that have kind of combined together on their own in the wild. This ball kind of rolled around in a parking lot until it gathered enough materials to roll into a ball like this. This has lots of materials that birds would love to use for nesting. You can also find moss or lichens or even cotton balls for them to use. So now that you're getting more interested in birds, you might be wondering how you can attract them to your yard so you can see them up close and learn to identify them. One great way to attract birds is to give them a birdhouse to live in. There are all different kinds of birdhouses, and the birdhouse you get will depend partly on what type of bird you want to attract. Owls and ducks have large houses that you can usually find online or even construct yourself out of wood. A small wooden house like this is good to attract small songbirds like sparrows and finches. Now, if you happen to have a dried gourd lying around, you can make a great birdhouse for martins. martins have been found to be more successful in their nesting and breeding whenever they have a natural, well-insulated home like this dried gourd. Now, to make this into a birdhouse, all you have to do is drill a hole in the middle part of the body of the gourd, probably about 2 inches wide. That way they'll be able to go in and out comfortably. If you're looking for a dried gourd, you can grow them in your backyard and dry them out for next season, or you can probably find them at a farmer's market or a craft store. Now, another thing you can do to attract birds to your home is to give them a source of food. There are all different types of bird feeders, and there are hummingbird feeders also that are special for hummingbirds to provide them nectar. However, if you're trying to attract birds that have seeds as their main source of food, you can really construct a simple bird feeder out of materials that you might already have at home. The first thing you'll need is a knife for spreading, a nut or seed butter. If you're allergic to peanuts or nuts, you can use sunflower seed butter. That works great too. And you'll need a cardboard roll from toilet paper or a paper towel roll. The last thing you'll need is bird seed. You can also use chia seeds or any other type of unsalted seeds that don't have any other seasonings or additives. But the important thing is that they're whole seeds that birds can eat. So first you're going to take your paper towel roll or your toilet paper roll, and you're going to get some of your peanut butter or sunflower seed butter, and you're just going to spread it all over the outside of the roll. Now, the only important thing here is just to get coating of this peanut butter all around the outside of the roll. So now that that's totally coated, you're simply going to put some of your bird seed in a plate like this, or your chia seeds or whatever you have, and you're going to roll the coated paper towel roll in the seeds. So you might have to go over it a couple times to get an even layer, but look, here we are now, and it's totally done. It's completely coated with seed, and the seed is sticking to the nut butter, and you don't even have to put a string or a hole in this because it already has this hollow center. So you can just take it and stick it on a branch in your yard and watch the birds come and feast. Just like that. There are so many things that birds do for us and so many ways that they inspire us. Let's do everything that we can to make sure that they're around for generations to come. Thank you for joining us at the Rio Bosque Wetlands Park and at the IDEA Edgemere Falcon Farm to learn all about birds. Make sure to keep your eyes and ears out for them.